Some crimes are so evil, they shake the world. These killers carried out horrific acts, but their reactions in court are just as shocking. Michael Pech's case is a chilling example. His actions stunned everyone, but his sentencing reaction was even more unsettling. Justice has spoken, but did they feel it? Let's begin.
Just a little before she did what she done to my son. I can't believe this, really, I can't believe this.
Tano Thompson, a former Atlanta police officer, was convicted of murdering her boyfriend. She showed no remorse, claiming self-defense, but evidence contradicted her story. In May 2014, Fort Lauderdale witnessed a tragic crime that shook the community. Miami police officer Carl Patrick, known for his dedication and compassion, was found dead in his Pembroke Pines home. His live-in girlfriend, Tano Thompson, claimed self-defense, but her actions and inconsistencies painted a different picture. Carl Patrick was a dedicated Miami police officer who spent his life serving others. In May 2014, his life was tragically cut short when he was found dead in his Pembroke Pines home, still wearing his uniform. The person responsible was his live-in girlfriend, Tano Thompson, who claimed she shot Carl in self-defense because he had been offensive. However, prosecutors uncovered troubling facts that cast doubt on her story. After the shooting, Thompson took Carl's phone, preventing him from calling for help. Instead of seeking assistance, she fabricated a pregnancy and even used his credit cards after his death. These actions painted a picture of deceit rather than desperation. Carl's mother, Lucille Patrick, was heartbroken by the loss of her son. She stood firm against Thompson's claim of mistreatment, describing Carl as a kind-hearted man who loved Tano deeply. "My son was good to that lady and loved her so much he couldn't see the ugly in her," Lucille said, her grief palpable.
My son was good to that lady, and he loved her so much that he could not see the ugly in her.
The trial was filled with conflicting stories, leaving the courtroom divided. Tano Thompson's family begged for mercy, describing her as a compassionate person and claiming she was a victim of mistreatment. They pleaded with the court to consider her difficult past and alleged struggles. However, the prosecutors presented a very different picture. They argued there was no proof of the mistreatment Thompson had described. Instead, they focused on her actions after the shooting, which appeared calculated and heartless, leaving Carl Patrick to die. Later, she misused his credit cards and faked a pregnancy, showing a lack of remorse and responsibility for her actions. When it was time for sentencing, Thompson addressed Carl's grieving mother. Fighting back tears, she said, "I didn't mean for him to die. I did it to defend myself." But her words didn't bring comfort or change the outcome. The family saw her apology as too little, too late. The court ultimately sided with the evidence, finding Thompson guilty. For Carl's loved ones, her actions spoke louder than words, leaving them with heartbreak and a sense of betrayal they would carry forever. In August 2016, Tano Thompson was found guilty of second-degree murder. On November 4th, 2016, she was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole, but she didn't show any remorse. Judge Jeffrey Cohen delivered the sentence, bringing a sense of justice to Patrick's loved ones. The courtroom was filled with mixed emotions, sorrow, relief, and anger. Patrick's family and friends hugged, finding some solace in the verdict. Lucille Patrick expressed gratitude, saying he couldn't kill that woman, but she did it. Despite the pain, she found comfort in knowing that her son's killer would be held accountable. The case serves as a grim reminder of how deception and tragedy can intertwine, leaving behind broken hearts and unanswered questions. Breaking news: Evil Lives Here now has merch. Support the channel and grab your gear today. Check the link in the description. Tano Thompson's actions left a family heartbroken in disbelief. But the next case shows a story of a rising star's life murder.
To sterilize Sierra Harp to prevent any more children being born. We also ask for the highest punishment of life without parole.
Raheem Grant, an Atlanta rapper known as Red Beezy, was a rising star. He started his music career as a child and even performed at Showtime at the Apollo when he was just 7 years old. By his 20s, he was not only a rapper but also a skilled producer and recording engineer. Despite his success, Raheem's life took a tragic turn on December 29, 2017, due to a volatile relationship with the mother of his child, Sierra Harp. In 2013, Sierra Harp approached Raheem Grant for an autograph and a job. Raheem, kind and driven, hired her to promote his shows. Their professional relationship soon turned romantic, and in 2014 they welcomed a beautiful daughter, Angel. Raheem was a devoted father who always put his daughter first, but his relationship with Sierra became increasingly difficult. By late 2017, Raheem was preparing for an exciting music tour, working hard to grow his career. During this time, Sierra, who had nowhere else to stay, moved in with him temporarily. However, her behavior became unpredictable. She often had fits of jealousy, leading to heated arguments. Concerned for his safety, Raheem's mother, Geraldine, advised him to record their interactions just in case. On December 29, 2017, tragedy struck. Sierra appeared at a neighbor's house with stab wounds, holding little Angel in her arms. When the police arrived at Raheem's home, they discovered he had been shot multiple times and stabbed. Sierra claimed it was self-defense, but the evidence suggested otherwise. This heartbreaking event ended Raheem's life, leaving his loved ones to mourn a talented artist and a caring father. At first, investigators believed Raheem had attacked Sierra Harp, forcing her to defend herself. However, Raheem's mother, Geraldine, firmly denied this, explaining that her son was never a violent person. As suspicions deepened, the autopsy results revealed shocking details. Raheem had been shot 7 times, including in the back of his head. These injuries made it clear that he had been defenseless during the attack. The case took a major turn when investigators accessed Raheem's phone. What they found was chilling. In one video, Raheem documented his injuries, painfully stating, "This is what Sierra Harp did to me." Other videos, filmed by Sierra herself, showed her angrily yelling at him and trying to stage a scene to make it look like self-defense. One of the most heartbreaking moments was when Raheem, struggling to survive, was shot again. The evidence from Raheem's phone exposed the truth and provided justice for a kind-hearted father whose life was tragically cut short. It also revealed his bravery in ensuring his story was heard. On February 22, 2018, Sierra Harp was arrested and charged with Raheem's murder. During her trial, the videos left no doubt about her actions, which showed no remorse for her act. In May 2019, Sierra was found guilty of malice murder and aggravated assault. She was sentenced to 125 years in prison. Raheem's mother, Geraldine, now raises Angel, ensuring she grows up surrounded by love and away from the pain caused by her mother's actions. This heartbreaking case reminds us of the importance of recognizing toxic and dangerous relationships. Raheem was a talented artist, a devoted father, and someone who deserved a future free from harm. His legacy lives on in his music and the love his mother provides for Angel. Harp's horrifying actions remind us of the dangers lurking in toxic relationships, but the next case shows a high-profile case where love and betrayal claim self-defense collide.
I waited so long to be able to speak to her face to face, and I finally got that for myself personally, so I hope prison serves her well.
On September 27, 2020, 33-year-old Ashley Benefield shot and killed her estranged husband, 58-year-old Doug Benefield, at her home in Florida. Their troubled marriage, filled with allegations of mistreatment and legal battles, became the focus of a trial that the media dubbed the Black Swan Trial. Ashley, a former ballerina, claimed she acted in self-defense, but many questioned her true intentions. Ashley stood before the court and described a marriage marked by fear and control. She testified that Doug had been hurtful throughout their relationship, often trying to dominate her life. On the night of the tragic incident, she said an argument escalated dangerously. According to Ashley, Doug blocked her from leaving her home, advanced toward her in anger, and struck her in the face. Feeling terrified and trapped, she grabbed a gun and fired in what she claimed was self-defense. Ashley also shared that she had tried to protect herself and their child in the past. She filed for injunctions against Doug in 2018 and 2020, accusing him of mistreatment and seeking to keep him away from their child. However, no criminal charges were ever brought against Doug, and one of the injunctions was still unresolved when the incident occurred. The prosecution, led by Suzanne O'Donnell, argued against Ashley's claims. O'Donnell pointed to the physical evidence, noting that Doug's bullet wound came from the side, suggesting he wasn't facing Ashley when he was shot. The prosecutor accused Ashley of staging the event to gain sole custody of their child and claimed her grief during the trial was an act to mislead the court. The trial of Ashley Benefield was filled with twists and intense moments that captured everyone's attention. During the proceedings, Ashley's defense team raised concerns about potential issues with the jury. They claimed one juror might have withheld information that showed a bias, while another was accused of sharing details about the trial using a cell phone. These allegations created a stir, but the judge carefully reviewed them and decided to dismiss both claims, allowing the trial to continue. As the case unfolded, Ashley's claim of self-defense came under heavy scrutiny. She testified that she feared for her life when her husband, Doug Benefield, allegedly attacked her, but the evidence didn't fully back up her story. Prosecutors argued that the physical evidence, including the direction of the bullet wound, didn't align with her version of events. This raised serious doubts about whether she was truly acting in self-defense or if her actions were premeditated. In the end, the jury made their decision. They did not believe Ashley was completely innocent, but they also didn't find her guilty of second-degree murder. Instead, she was convicted of manslaughter, a lesser but still serious charge. It was a pivotal moment that shaped her future and brought some closure to Doug's grieving family. On December 3, 2024, Ashley Benefield was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. As the sentence was read, Ashley reportedly showed no emotion. Doug Benefield's family, however, felt justice was served.
I'm going to sentence you to 20 years in Florida State Prison. That's to be followed by 10 years of probation.
Doug's daughter, Eva Benefield, gave a heartfelt statement during the hearing. "My dad was the best man I have ever known in my entire family," she said. "I hope prison serves her well." The family expressed relief that Ashley was held accountable, though they also mourned the loss of Doug, a father and friend whose life ended in tragedy.
My dad was the best man that I've ever known in my entire life, and he will continue to hold that in my mind and in our family's mind forever.
Where Ashley Benefield's case involved a complicated mix of claims and counterclaims, it highlights the devastating impact of household conflict when violence becomes the resolution. Ashley Benefield's trial captivated the nation. The next case is even more harrowing, where a tragic loss changes lives forever. On September 8, 2021, the peaceful Gulf Breeze community was shaken by a devastating incident. U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer reports a heated argument with her husband, Colin Turner, over their 3 children. By the end of that day, Colin Turner, a loving father and Marine veteran, would be dead, and Kuhn would face charges of first-degree premeditated murder. Bree and Colin's relationship had grown increasingly tense over the years, and September 8, 2021 would mark a tragic turning point. That day, the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office received multiple calls. The first 2 calls, one from Bree and the other from Colin, described heated arguments but revealed no clear signs of physical violence. Deputies arrived and left each time, seeing no reason to intervene further. Later that evening at 6:22 p.m., a third and final call came through. Colin, sounding distressed, told dispatchers that he had been locked in the garage by Bree. He described how she had tried to harm him when he attempted to re-enter the house. Then, during the call, a loud bang echoed in the background. "She just shot me," Colin yelled during the call, as stated by police. Colin's voice is filled with pain and fear when he's on the call. What followed was even more horrifying. 3 more gunshots rang out, and then there was only silence.
What was that? You just shot me! I'm shooting. You just shot him. I just heard 4 shots.
By the time deputies returned to the scene, it was too late. Colin Turner, a Marine veteran and father, had lost his life in a tragic and irreversible moment. The events of that day left a community shocked and a family forever changed. Bree was arrested and charged with murder, leading to a trial that revealed 2 very different versions of the truth. Her defense team described her as a woman trapped in an offensive marriage. They claimed Colin, a Marine veteran with a traumatic brain injury, had been emotionally and physically harmful towards her. They argued that years of suffering had caused Bree to fear for her life and the safety of her children. Her lawyers cited battered spouse syndrome, explaining that Bree acted out of desperation. However, the prosecutors painted a starkly different picture. They argued that Bree's actions were not out of fear but premeditated and deliberate. They presented compelling evidence where Colin's final moments could be heard. Testimony from Bree's brother, Eric, further raised questions about her defense, casting doubt on her version of events. For 4 days, the jury listened closely as both sides made their cases. Despite interruptions caused by Hurricane Helene, the jury returned with a clear decision. Bree Kuhn was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. The verdict marked the end of a heartbreaking trial that left a family grieving and a community grappling with the tragedy. Circuit Judge James Duncan sentenced Bree to life in prison without the chance of parole. Still, she had no remorse for her act. She didn't think about her 3 children, witnesses to the tragic events, who were placed in protective custody. This story serves as a painful reminder of the devastating consequences of unresolved conflicts and the mistreatment of household chores. While Bree claimed she acted out of fear and desperation, the evidence painted a picture of a tragic choice that cost Colin his life and shattered 2 families. Our next case is straight out of a nightmare.
Arrest papers say his 17-year-old co-worker, Riley Whitelaw, rejected unwanted advances by him at work. She was found dead one night in the break room.
A typical day at the Colorado Springs Walgreens turned into a nightmare in June 2022, shattering the quiet routine of the store. Riley Whitelaw, a bright and hardworking 17-year-old employee, never imagined her job would place her in mortal danger. Her co-worker, Joshua Johnson, had developed a fixation on her, a dangerous obsession that escalated into a horrifying act of violence.
I bet you like to be choked. There were other witnesses called too. One of them, the assistant manager at that Walgreens. 2 others were Riley's friends. All 3 said they heard stories about Johnson acting weird towards Riley.
Joshua's disturbing behavior began long before the fatal day. He made his infatuation with Riley no secret, despite her repeated rejections. Riley even reported his actions to her managers, mentioning that his advances made her deeply uncomfortable. Management, however, failed to act decisively. The tension reached its breaking point when Riley requested additional shifts, unaware that it would bring her into closer contact with Johnson. On June 11, 2022, the store became the scene of an unspeakable crime. As Riley worked in the employee break room that afternoon, Joshua Johnson confronted her. Armed with a deadly determination, fueled by rejection, he attacked her in a vicious act of brutality. Surveillance footage revealed Johnson lingering near the area before the crime, his intentions clear in hindsight. When Riley didn't return to her duties, co-workers became concerned. Upon entering the break room, they discovered a scene of horror. Riley's lifeless body, surrounded by signs of a violent struggle. Johnson, meanwhile, fled the store, leaving behind damning evidence, including his own DNA. Authorities quickly launched a manhunt, eventually apprehending Johnson miles away. In custody, his chilling lack of remorse only deepened the tragedy of Riley's loss.
He's preparing to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole.
In October 2023, Joshua Johnson faced a courtroom packed with Riley's grieving family and friends. He showed no emotion as the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was heavy with emotion as Riley's family addressed Johnson directly, expressing their heartbreak and fury. Riley's mother spoke with raw pain, calling Johnson a monster and hoping he would suffer every day in prison. The devastation extended beyond the family, with the community mourning the loss of a young life taken far too soon. Riley's murder served as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked obsession and the devastating consequences of failing to act on warning signs.
Anything Riley ever has taken on, she's always got both feet in. Riley was a kind, loving, empathetic human being.
Breaking news: Evil Lives Here now has merch. Support the channel and grab your gear today. Check the link in the description. Up next is the case of Jesse Matthew, a man whose trusted exterior concealed a sinister predator.
The 32-year-old has already been charged with the abduction of Hannah Grant, a second-year UVA student who vanished back on September 13th. Police say she was last seen with Matthew
in the picturesque college town of Charlottesville, Virginia. Jesse Matthew hid behind a charming facade. To the public, he seemed like an ordinary man. But lurking beneath was a predatory killer whose crimes left families shattered and communities horrified. His name became infamous after two young women, Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington, vanished under eerily similar circumstances.
A surveillance video from downtown Charlottesville. Hannah is seen walking by a pub, a gas station, and a jewelry store, running at times.
It began with the disappearance of 18-year-old Hannah Graham in September 2014. The University of Virginia student was last seen on surveillance footage, walking alone late at night. Witnesses described her speaking to a man matching Matthew's description. Days later, his car was found abandoned, but Hannah remained missing. This wasn't Matthew's first brush with suspicion. In 2009, Morgan Harrington, a Virginia Tech student, disappeared after attending a Metallica concert. Her body was discovered months later on a remote farm. Despite DNA evidence linking Matthew to Morgan's murder, it wasn't until Hannah's case that police were able to pin him down.
This evening, authorities now revealing forensic evidence might link this case to another mystery.
In 2009, Harrington was visiting the University of Virginia for a Metallica concert when she went missing.
As investigators dug deeper, a chilling pattern emerged. Jesse Matthew was a calculated predator who used his charm to lure his victims before carrying out unspeakable acts. The two cases sparked outrage and fear, with many wondering how such a dangerous individual had managed to evade justice for so long.
Now, her disappearance triggered a massive search, and Matthew was later captured near Galveston, Texas. Graham's remains were found within a rural part of Albemarle County back in October of last year.
The hunt for Matthew became a national story. Police eventually tracked him to a beach in Texas, where he was arrested in September 2014. His trial revealed shocking details of his brutality. He had kidnapped and murdered both Hannah and Morgan, leaving a trail of evidence that ultimately sealed his fate. In a dramatic plea deal to avoid the death penalty, Matthew admitted to both murders, receiving 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. While the plea deal provided some closure, it left many feeling that Matthew got off too lightly. The courtroom was tense as the families of Hannah and Morgan delivered emotional impact statements. They described the immeasurable pain of losing their daughters to such senseless violence.
Morgan Harrington's mother told us she was going to be there every day that he was in court because she wanted to look at him. You know, you're not going to be able to hurt anybody else again.
Matthew sat expressionless, his cold demeanor a stark contrast to the anguish pouring from the victim's loved ones. Forensic evidence presented during the trial painted him as a remorseless killer, one whose actions had devastated not just the families, but entire communities.
His evil deprived the world of a great talent, but Hannah's enduring gift to us all is that she enabled this wicked man to be apprehended and convicted. She did change the world, but at a terrible price.
Hannah's father, John Graham, addressed the court with words that resonated deeply. "You took our daughter, our light, our joy. You didn't just murder her, You murdered a part of all of us." The family's raw pain and the judge's harsh sentencing were met with both relief and sorrow.
The finality and accountability that has been achieved today will allow our family to redirect energy into healing and recovery.
Matthew's lack of remorse left a lasting impression, turning him into a symbol of the horrors of predatory violence. His crimes serve as a haunting reminder that evil can often hide in plain sight. Next, we uncover the disturbing case of Daniel Messel, whose predatory behavior turned a college town's vibrant nightlife into a hunting ground.
Daniel Messel has a long history of violence and alcohol problems dating back nearly 30 years, including this case from 1987.
It started with what should have been a joyous night for 22-year-old Hannah Wilson, a senior at Indiana University. It was spring 2015, and Hannah had just celebrated the end of classes with friends. But that joy turned into unspeakable horror when she disappeared after leaving a bar. Hours later, her body was found in a desolate field in Brown County, Indiana. The killer? A man whose stalking tendencies had escalated into something far more sinister. Daniel Messel. Messel, a 49-year-old with a history of violence, was no stranger to law enforcement. Investigators soon discovered a chilling connection between him and Hannah. At the crime scene, Messel's phone was found near her body, tying him directly to the murder. But this wasn't an isolated crime. Authorities uncovered a disturbing pattern. Messel had a history of preying on vulnerable women, lurking in shadows, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. For Hannah, that moment came as she tried to make her way home, unknowingly crossing paths with a predator. Messel attacked her with a blunt object, causing severe trauma that ended her life. The brutality of the act shocked even seasoned detectives, but as the investigation unraveled, it became clear that this wasn't his first violent crime.
Convicted of killing IU student Hannah Wilson has begun serving 80 years in prison.
During the trial, Messel's previous behavior came into sharp focus. Witnesses revealed a man who had a penchant for stalking and harassing women, with one survivor recounting a harrowing escape years earlier. Prosecutors painted a vivid picture of a man who thrived on power and control, targeting young women like Hannah as part of his twisted routine. The courtroom was tense as graphic evidence was presented. Photos of the crime scene, paired with testimony about Hannah's final moments, left jurors visibly shaken. Messel sat stoically, his lack of remorse further enraging those in attendance. In 2016, Daniel Messel was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 80 years in prison, ensuring he would never harm another person. For Hannah's family, the sentencing was a bittersweet moment. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring back the bright, ambitious young woman they'd lost.
Addressing him was the hardest thing that any mother should ever have done.
Further investigations linked Messel to other unsolved crimes, with authorities suspecting him in the disappearance of Lauren Spearer, another Indiana University student who vanished in 2011. Though never formally charged in that case, Messel's predatory behavior raised questions about how many more victims he may have claimed. The courtroom during Messel's sentencing was filled with raw emotion. Hannah's mother spoke directly to the man who took her daughter's life, her words echoing in the heavy silence. "You didn't just take Hannah, you took a part of all of us." Messel, however, showed no emotion, maintaining the same detached demeanor he had displayed throughout the trial. His refusal to acknowledge the pain he caused only deepened the community's outrage. Now let's take a flight over to London, where Delroy Easton Grant preyed on the city's most vulnerable, leaving behind a trail of fear and devastation that spanned decades.
At his home nearby, forensic investigators were still looking for evidence against him. His alleged crimes go back 17 years.
For nearly 2 decades, Delroy Easton Grant, infamously known as the Nightstalker, prowled the quiet suburbs of South London. His targets weren't what most people would expect: elderly, vulnerable individuals who lived alone. The calculated way he terrorized his victims turned neighborhoods into places of fear, leaving entire communities on edge. Grant's reign of terror began in the early 1990s. Under the cover of darkness, he would break into the homes of elderly victims, ranging in age from their 60s to their 90s. What made his crimes particularly chilling was the twisted pleasure he derived from prolonging their torment. His method was as strategic as it was horrifying. After disabling phone lines and cutting off power, he would creep into bedrooms, where he attacked his victims and ransacked their homes. The psychological scars he left were devastating, with many victims too terrified to remain in their homes after the attacks. Despite numerous reports and investigations, police struggled to catch him. The meticulous nature of his crimes and a series of investigative missteps allowed him to evade capture for years. His double life as a seemingly devoted father and husband only deepened the sense of betrayal when his true identity was revealed. The turning point came in 2009, when advances in forensic technology linked Grant to DNA evidence found at multiple crime scenes. Police conducted an undercover operation, leading to his arrest as he prowled the streets, searching for his next victim.
The Metropolitan Police had to apologize for missing an opportunity to catch him in 1999 when his car was spotted at the scene of a burglary.
During his trial in 2011, prosecutors detailed the over 100 attacks he committed, labeling him one of the most prolific sex offenders in British history. The courtroom heard harrowing accounts from survivors, painting a chilling picture of a man who thrived on fear and power. Grant maintained his innocence throughout the trial, but the evidence was irrefutable. He was convicted of 29 charges, including assault and burglary, though investigators believe the true number of his crimes was much higher. The judge handed him 4 life sentences, ensuring he would never again harm another victim. Grant's complete lack of remorse during sentencing was a chilling reminder of his cold and calculating nature. His expression remained blank, even as horrifying actions were recounted in detail. Now let's shift focus to Washington, D.C., where John Hinckley Jr.'s twisted obsession turned into an assassination attempt that shook the nation to its core.
In 1981, a bullet narrowly missed the heart of a sitting president. It was the man who pulled the trigger. Here's how history remembers John Hinckley Jr., the obsessive man who nearly killed Ronald Reagan.
On March 30th, 1981, the tranquility of Washington, D.C. was shattered by an attempted assassination that nearly claimed the life of President Ronald Reagan. John Hinckley Jr. didn't act out of political motivations, but from a chilling obsession with actress Jodie Foster. His crime wasn't just about a single act of violence. It was the culmination of years of delusion and fixation, turning an innocent Hollywood starlet into the unwitting focus of a deadly plan.
Yesterday it emerged that Hinckley had written a lot of letters to the 19-year-old actress who starred in the movie Taxi Driver.
Hinckley's downward spiral began long before that fateful day. As a young man, he struggled with deep feelings of inadequacy and isolation, withdrawing from his family and peers. While attending a screening of Taxi Driver, he became captivated by Jodie Foster, who played a young woman caught in a cycle of harm. What started as admiration quickly turned into an obsession as he followed her career and life with fanatical determination.
Who is this? Who is this? John. Who?
When Foster enrolled at Yale University in 1980, Hinckley moved to New Haven, Connecticut to stalk her. He sent her disturbing letters, recorded rambling audio messages, and even attempted to call her directly. But his efforts to win her attention failed, pushing him to devise a shocking plan to make her notice him. Hinckley's plan involved assassinating the most powerful figure in the world, the President of the United States. In his twisted mind, killing President Reagan would earn him the recognition he craved from Foster. On March 30th, 1981, armed with a .22 caliber revolver, Hinckley blended into the crowd outside the Washington Hilton Hotel, where Reagan was delivering a speech. As the president exited the building, Hinckley opened fire, striking 4 people, including Reagan.
First shot hits Jim Brady, the press secretary, in the head. He falls to the ground.
Reagan was critically wounded by a bullet that ricocheted off the limousine and lodged near his heart. White House Press Secretary James Brady, Secret Service agent Timothy McCarthy, and a police officer were also gravely injured. The scene was chaotic as agents rushed to subdue Hinckley while ensuring Reagan's safety. Hinckley was immediately arrested, and the nation held its breath as Reagan fought for his life in the hospital. Remarkably, the president survived, but the incident left permanent scars, both physical and emotional, on all involved.
The jury had ruled Hinckley, then 25, not guilty by reason of insanity, but ordered him confined to a mental hospital for life.
In court, Hinckley's defense focused on his mental instability. Psychiatrists testified that he suffered from severe depression and psychosis, leading to his obsession with Foster and his belief that violence would win her affection. In a controversial verdict, Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity and committed to a mental institution rather than prison. Hinckley spent over 3 decades at St. Elizabeth's Hospital undergoing treatment. Despite his eventual release under strict conditions in 2016, many questioned whether justice had been served, especially given the trauma inflicted on the victims and the nation. The courtroom reaction to Hinckley's verdict was a mix of outrage and disbelief. Survivors, like James Brady, who was left permanently disabled, became powerful advocates for gun control, spurred by the tragedy. Reagan's remarkable resilience in recovering and resuming his duties became a symbol of strength for the American people. Jodie Foster, the unwitting catalyst of Hinckley's crime, was deeply shaken. The actress rarely speaks about the ordeal, but it's clear the stalking left a lasting impact on her life. For millions, Hinckley's obsession with Foster was a chilling reminder of how delusion and fixation can escalate into national tragedy. Next, we turn to the case of Jameer Miller, where a moment of anger led to irreversible tragedy, leaving lives shattered and questions unanswered.
The big story tonight at 5, breaking news in Detroit. Detroit police say a man is in custody at this hour in connection to the kidnapping and murder of Detroit Medical Center nurse Patrice Wilson, who was killed Saturday.
Look at that person lingering around the outside. Hat on, mask over his face, and a long blonde wig. Prosecutors and police say that is 36-year-old Jameer Miller.
On a quiet May morning in Detroit, Michigan, nurse Patrice Wilson finished her overnight shift at a local hospital. Unbeknownst to her, lurking in the shadows was Jameer Miller, her ex-boyfriend turned stalker. As she stepped into her car, Miller ambushed her, forcing his way into the vehicle at gunpoint. This kidnapping would end in a chilling crime that shook the city to its core.
And it was a man that allegedly would not leave her alone, would not respond to her wishes to leave her alone.
Miller's obsession with Patrice began after their relationship ended. Unable to accept her moving on, he began a campaign of harassment, one that escalated dangerously over time. Authorities later revealed that Miller had a history of violence, including connections to the 2011 disappearance of another girlfriend. Despite his alarming behavior, no one could have predicted the horrifying events that unfolded.
Out his alleged plan to abduct his ex-girlfriend nurse, Patrice Wilson. Miller knows where Wilson works. He knows when she gets off from work.
That fateful morning, Miller abducted Patrice from the hospital parking lot. Surveillance footage captured the terrifying moment, showing her desperate struggle to break free. Tragically, her body was discovered the next day in the trunk of her car, abandoned in a neighborhood miles away. She had been shot in the head, a cold and calculated execution.
Her attacker speeding away, driving her Lincoln SUV. Wilson was later found stuffed in the trunk of that SUV. She had been shot to death.
The case unraveled quickly as detectives traced Miller's movements. Using surveillance footage, witness accounts, and digital evidence, investigators built a damning case. Miller attempted to evade justice, but was arrested just days later. His criminal record, which included multiple offenses, painted a picture of a man with unchecked rage and a dangerous history.
She was simply trying to live her life, work hard, and break off a relationship that she knew was not good for her.
During his trial, prosecutors highlighted Miller's pattern of targeting women who rejected him. Testimony from family members, friends, and even strangers illustrated the fear and devastation he left in his wake. His chilling lack of remorse was on full display as the evidence mounted against him. Miller pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping, facing a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was tense as Patrice's family confronted him, their voices trembling with grief and anger. Despite their emotional pleas, Miller remained cold, his expression devoid of remorse. His sentencing marked the end of a dark chapter for Detroit, but left unanswered questions about the justice system's ability to prevent such tragedies.
Livingston says she can't stomach the thought of losing another child.
Back in 2003, I lost a son. He was riding his bike and he was 15 years old and a car hit him.
Community members held vigils, mourning the loss of a vibrant woman whose life was cut short by senseless violence. In the courtroom, Patrice's mother delivered a powerful statement, recounting the devastating moment she learned of her daughter's death.
I can say to you, I don't understand you. What kind of person are you? Where you come from? Who can even support you?
His lack of reaction only deepened the outrage for those present. For Patrice's family, there was no closure, only the bittersweet knowledge that her killer would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Jameer Miller's lack of remorse highlighted the terrifying consequences of obsession turned deadly. But the next case centers on Harvey Nichols, a man whose fixation escalated into a brutal crime, leaving a community shaken.
I heard gunshots and just dived for cover. It was horrific.
It all happened so quickly, and the next thing I see is the gun.
On September 13, 2005, the glamorous Harvey Nichols department store became the site of a horrifying crime. Amid bustling shoppers, Michael Pech, a former security guard, approached Clare Bernal, a 22-year-old beauty consultant, with chilling intent. In a matter of seconds, the store transformed from a luxurious haven into a scene of chaos as Michael enacted his devastating plan.
Exclusive Harvey Nichols department store in London tonight. Police said a man and a woman were pronounced dead at the store.
Michael Pech had become obsessed with Claire after a brief relationship. When Claire ended things, his behavior spiraled. He began stalking her relentlessly, sending threatening messages and following her every move. Claire, terrified, reported him to the authorities. Michael was arrested and charged with harassment, but despite being bailed with strict conditions, he continued to track Claire. On the day of the murder, Michael slipped past Harvey Nichols' security. Armed with a 9mm handgun he had smuggled into the UK from Slovakia, he followed Claire into the beauty hall. Witnesses later recalled seeing him pacing near her counter, his face dark with anger. As Clare chatted with a colleague, Michael pulled out his gun and shot her in the back of the head. She collapsed instantly.
The thing we established was that 4 shots were fired, and then a further one was shot into the ceiling, and then he turned the gun on himself.
Shocker screamed and ducked for cover as Michael fired 3 more shots into Clare before turning the gun on himself. Witnesses described the horror of seeing Clare's lifeless body on the store floor, surrounded by broken glass and the lingering echo of gunshots.
Behind this shocking murder in the most prestigious shopping street in the UK lies a tale of love, obsession, and a very modern phenomenon, stalking.
Michael's obsession had robbed Clare of her future and left her loved one shattered. Despite Clare's reports to the authorities and Michael's bail conditions, he was able to acquire a firearm and evade detection. The failure to protect Clare from a known stalker sparked outrage across the UK, leading to calls for stricter stalking laws and better support for victims.
As they told me what had happened, I knew it was Pech. I just knew. I said it's Pech.
Clare's mother, Patrice Bernal, became a vocal advocate for stalking victims, dedicating her life to raising awareness and pushing for legal reforms. She was so full of life, Patrice recalled, her voice breaking. No one should endure what Clare did.
I've learned about another world that we live in, and I've been cocooned, and I've cocooned my children.
The public outcry following Clare's murder led to the establishment of organizations like Protection Against Stalking. While justice couldn't bring Clare back, her story became a catalyst for change, giving strength to countless stalking victims who feared they had no voice. Our next case takes stalking to a new level. Stephen Duxbury, a man whose actions turned a young woman's worst fears into a terrifying reality.
The suspicious death of a 27-year-old Orlando woman. Sasha Samsudean's body was found Saturday night inside of her apartment at Uptown Place.
In the early hours of October 17, 2015, Sasha Samsudean, a vibrant 27-year-old with a bright future, was found lifeless in her Orlando apartment. Sasha had been enjoying a night out with friends before the unimaginable happened. What started as an ordinary evening turned into a nightmare when Stephen Duxbury, a security guard at her apartment complex, used his position of trust to commit an act of unthinkable violence. Stephen Duxbury, a 33-year-old security guard at the apartment complex, exploited his position to target Sasha. When Sasha, slightly intoxicated, struggled to find her keys to enter her apartment, Duxbury offered to help. What seemed like an act of kindness quickly turned sinister. Surveillance footage captured Sasha entering the complex with Duxbury following closely behind, a chilling image that would later haunt investigators.
As a security guard, he used his access to prey on someone who was very vulnerable.
What happened next unfolded behind closed doors, but the evidence told a story of horror. Duxbury used his master key fob to access Sasha's apartment. There, he launched a brutal attack, strangling her in a desperate attempt to silence her screams. Sasha fought for her life, scratching Duxbury and leaving DNA evidence under her fingernails, a silent testimony to her struggle.
They started gathering evidence inside Sasha Samsudean's neat and tidy apartment after finding her lifeless body in her bed October 17th.
The morning after, Sasha's friends became worried when she didn't respond to calls or texts. Their fears turned into devastation when her lifeless body was discovered inside her apartment, wrapped in a blanket. Investigators quickly zeroed in on Duxbury after uncovering damning evidence: misuse of the key fob, inconsistencies in his alibi, and Sasha's DNA found on his person. The community, once trusting of their security staff, was left in shock and fear.
Death is the result of asphyxiation and a particular type of asphyxiation, manual strangulation.
The trial was harrowing. The prosecution meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a chilling picture of a man who betrayed his position of trust for his twisted desires. Sasha's family and friends filled the courtroom. Their grief was palpable as they relived the horrifying details of her final moments. Duxbury, who showed no remorse, claimed innocence and attempted to shift blame onto others. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for only 5 hours before finding him guilty of first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary. He was sentenced to life without parole, ensuring he would never harm another innocent victim again. Sasha's mother stood before the court, her voice trembling but determined, as she described the void left in their lives. Friends recounted Sasha's warmth and ambition, contrasting the bright future she had with the darkness of her end. Duxbury's cold, detached demeanor during these testimonies added another layer of pain for those seeking closure. The case served as a chilling reminder of how predators can hide in plain sight, even under the disguise of protection. The haunting image of Sasha's final moments and her fight for survival left an indelible mark on the community and beyond. But if this betrayal of trust shocked you, the next case takes it even further. Martin Muniz, a man who preyed on those closest to him.
I'm serious, I'm not crazy. And you could go to the address and verify. The address is 3719 Mac Court. But I want you to handcuff me first.
It started as an ordinary January evening in 2023 on Cleveland's Mac Court, where a quiet neighborhood turned into a nightmare. 4 family members were brutally shot to death in their own home, and an 8-year-old girl was left critically injured but clinging to life. The attacker? A relative they once trusted, Martin Muniz. This massacre wasn't random. It was a calculated eruption of violence that shocked an entire community. Muniz's relationship with his family had always been strained. He often clashed with them over perceived slights and unresolved tensions. On January 13, 2023, Martin Muniz arrived at the family home with vengeance on his mind. Armed with a handgun, he first turned on his father, shooting him point blank. His sister, her boyfriend, and their mother were next, each gunned down in cold blood.
You name the people again you said who he said he killed?
It's a sister. Her name is Angelique. The husband, Tone. 2 kids.
As chaos erupted, Muniz set his sights on the youngest member of the family, an 8-year-old girl. Though critically injured, she managed to survive the ordeal, becoming the key witness to this unfathomable tragedy. Muniz didn't flee immediately. Instead, he walked out of the home with a chilling calm, almost as if nothing had happened. Police apprehended Muniz later that evening, just blocks from the scene. During questioning, he displayed no remorse, instead blaming his actions on internal turmoil and long-standing family grievances. Investigators quickly pieced together the sequence of events using forensic evidence, witness statements, and the surviving girl's testimony.
Well, I tried to kill my sister's whole family, but 2 of them got lucky and lived.
Muniz's criminal record showed a dark history, including a connection to a 2013 cold case murder in New Jersey. This revelation painted a clearer picture of a man with a violent past, whose rage had now boiled over into a massacre. His own confession sealed his fate, as he admitted to pulling the trigger in a moment of uncontrollable anger. In the court, the details of the crime stunned even seasoned prosecutors. Muniz's defense attempted to argue diminished responsibility, claiming mental instability. But the jury was unswayed. The verdict? Guilty on all counts of murder, attempted murder, and multiple related charges. Muniz was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a punishment some family members felt was still too lenient for the horrors he inflicted.
The family has now come from all over the world to say goodbye and be here as 8-year-old Iana continues to fight.
Family members of the victims expressed their heartbreak and fury, with one relative calling Muniz a monster in disguise. The 8-year-old survivor, now in therapy, faces a lifetime of trauma, haunted by the memories of that night.
The suspect appeared to be almost grinning as the prosecutor mentioned his victims.
Muniz, meanwhile, sat stone-faced, his lack of remorse further fueling the anguish of those left behind. Outside the courtroom, neighbors and friends lit candles and held vigils for the slain family, grappling with the reality that such evil had lived among them. This case left an indelible scar in the community, a chilling reminder of how deep betrayal can cut. The next case takes stalking to an entirely different level. Joshua Stimson didn't just take a life. His calculated and obsessive behavior revealed a terrifying predator who stopped at nothing to control his victim.
Josh Stimson became increasingly threatening after Molly broke off their relationship and he turned up at her gym that day.
Molly McLaren was a bright, ambitious 23-year-old with her entire future ahead of her. She loved fitness, was pursuing a degree in health and nutrition, and lit up the lives of everyone around her. But beneath the surface of her happy life was a dark shadow. Joshua Stimson, a man who turned from a charming acquaintance into a relentless stalker. Their encounter on Tinder seemed harmless at first, but it would spiral into a nightmare that ended in unimaginable tragedy. Molly and Joshua began dating in November 2016, but the relationship quickly unraveled. Stimson displayed obsessive, controlling behavior, bombarding her with messages, monitoring her social media, and reacting with anger when things didn't go his way. Molly broke off the relationship in June 2017, but Stimson refused to accept her decision.
He turned very quickly into this very, very nasty, manipulative character. She was upset every day.
His stalking escalated rapidly. He began leaving cryptic posts on Facebook, referencing Molly by name and implying she was promiscuous. He also followed her to public places, including her gym, where CCTV later revealed him watching her every move. Despite Molly's attempts to cut ties and even reporting Stimson to the police, he continued to fixate on her, turning her life into a constant state of fear and anxiety.
when CCTV cameras captured Stimpson following Molly up into a gym in the dockside area of Chatham, he was already guilty of stalking her.
On June 29, 2017, Molly decided to work out at the gym in Chatham, Kent, hoping to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Unbeknownst to her, Stimpson was waiting for her in the parking lot, having meticulously planned his attack. CCTV captured his chilling behavior as he followed her inside, staying close but keeping his distance, a predator stalking its prey. When Molly left the gym and got into her car, Stimpson struck. Armed with a knife he had bought just days earlier, he forced his way into her vehicle and began a vicious attack. Molly fought desperately to escape, but Stimpson's rage was unrelenting. By the time emergency services arrived, Molly had succumbed to her injuries. She had been stabbed over 75 times. Stimpson was arrested at the scene, bloodied and unrepentant. During his trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence that demonstrated his calculated intent, from his stalking behaviors to the purchase of the murder weapon. Stimpson's defense argued diminished responsibility, claiming mental instability, but the jury rejected this outright.
Stimpson claimed he was suffering from a mental condition, but the jury said it was murder.
In February 2018, Joshua Stimpson was found guilty of Molly's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years. The judge described his actions as a brutal and sustained attack, driven by a need for control and revenge.
To begin with, we were both really strong and there for each other, but now Doug seems to be on his own.
Molly's family and friends shared stories of a vibrant young woman stolen too soon, their grief palpable as they faced the man responsible.
One of the charities involved said it's a disaster waiting to happen.
But it's not waiting to happen, it has happened.
Stimpson showed no remorse, his cold demeanor only deepening the pain for those mourning Molly's loss. Some crimes haunt us forever, and the killers in this video prove just how cold and ruthless they could be. But this is just the beginning. More shocking cases, more chilling reactions in the next video on screen now.